2016 Les Paul Studio in Pelham Blue. And for me, the Les Paul and Pelham is an awesome combination. Now looking down the neck from both sides, I seem to see a bit of relief there. But the real way to find out is to put a capo at the first fret, grab a feeler gauge, and we'll just start with 0.010 on the feeler gauge. Fret at the 17th, check on the 8th fret. Yeah, we got more, just a little more than 010. I like to end up with a little less relief than that, so we will turn the truss rod. Take off the truss rod cover. And loosen a little bit before you tighten. And these D and G strings get in the way, so take them out of the way. I'm gonna guess maybe almost a full turn. And now measure again. It's important that after you turn that truss rod, you tune back up before you check the relief in the neck again, because if the strings are too tight, it's gonna bend the neck a little more and show more relief. 007 now. Check at the 8th fret. Close. Yeah, it is 007. I'm just able to get that feeler gauge in there between the fret and the string, and the string's not moving. So we're at 007, which is a great place to be as far as I'm concerned. Relief, depending on if the guitar likes it. And of course I'm guessing now that we tighten the truss rod, that brought our action down, which it did. So we'll just bring it back up a tiny bit here. So we're at about 0.060. Whenever you turn the truss rod or just the bridge, you're going to need to immediately tune up. Otherwise, if you're listening for how a guitar plays and it's not tuned, you're not getting an accurate picture. So the guitar is playing kind of nice already, except for the open strings, the D and the A. And I kind of noticed this earlier, and I figured I was going to have to do something about it. The nut slots are cut a little too deep on those two strings, and the way I check that is I just fret on the 3rd fret with my finger, and then on the 1st fret I kind of press lightly, and I look to see if there's any space between the string and the 1st fret. If the string is just lying on the 1st fret when you've got your finger pressing down on the 3rd, then it's probably a little low, and the confirmation of that is when you play open string, we're going to fill in the E, A, and D slots with some super glue and baking soda. So when you're going to do this super glue thing, you want to put some tape around the nut to just make sure super glue doesn't get on other parts of the guitar. And that's a little trick I learned from, I think it was a Stu Mac video. Just put your feeler gauge underneath the strings, put the tape on the feeler gauge, and then pull it through. That take the strings out of the slots you're going to work on. First things first, for me, is usually just to clean out the nut slot so it's got a good little blank canvas that you can glue to. So just fold some sandpaper and do like that. Clean out anything. Looks like there was some graphite in here before. Give that super glue a nice clean surface to try and bond to. When it comes to the baking soda, it's kind of hard to work with. You got to find something to try and put it in the slot. And then if I get it all over like this, I'll kind of cover the slot and below, just so it's that if you've got it hanging all around, there's just more chance for the super glue to touch it, and once it touches, it pretty much solidifies immediately. I think I'm going to put another piece of tape around here. And you can see I've added a couple little pieces of tape to try and prevent, if any super glue rolls out of those slots, it getting on the fretboard. For the longest time I had trouble dealing with super glue, and these seem to be the thing that ended up working best for me. There's like these little pipettes, and I'm just able to control the amount a little better than I used to be using these things. When you're working with super glue like this and you're trying to put a tiny little bit somewhere, it's good to have like a little Kleenex, piece of paper towel, something handy, and all you want to do is drop usually a single drop like that is enough. Good and good. So didn't seem to roll down the front or the back of the nut too much, which is nice, as that does happen. If you end up with a little bit on the fretboard, it can be a hassle. Super glue is very sandable, so if you do get it on the fretboard, you can usually deal with that. Usually try and pick any residue away with your fingernail or something like that, something that won't scratch the fretboard, and then you can use very fine sandpaper on it, and it usually will just sand away. On finishes, that's another story. It can make a real mess depending on the finish. Sometimes it can hurt it right away, so you got to try and keep it off finish. Every now and then, if I didn't fill up the slot enough, I might have to do a second treatment even before anything else, and that means just putting a little more baking soda in there and another drop of super glue. But these seem fairly well filled up with that single dose I put in there, and just give them a minute or two to dry. So after a few minutes, you should be good to just start shaping the nut slots how you want them. Now, I've always heard with the nut slot file, you want to be going somewhat with the angle of the headstock, so especially on Gibsons, that comes into play. And I just go real slow with it. We will file all three of these guys down, and as we go, you want to be checking, because you don't want to go too far with the slot. Now I know I'm still got a lot to go here, but you want to put the string back in the slot, just fret on that third fret, and then look how much space you have between the string and the first fret. Got these all filed down to about the right level, and as a last step, I like to just take some fine sandpaper, so it just makes it nice and smooth in the bottom of that nut slot for the string. The less friction in there, the better. That means there'll be less binding at the nut slot, stay in tune better. You can hit the nut with sandpaper a little bit because it cleans right up when you do that, usually. Any residue. I didn't show it all on camera there, but it just took me filing and then periodically checking how high the strings were sitting in the slot. And when you check, you put it in there and you want to tune it up, of course. Doesn't have to be the exact tuning, but you want tension on the string. And you can look across the strings this way and see how they're lying in comparison with each other. And then fret on that third fret, press lightly on the first, and just check if you're close. You're looking for the string to just barely have a little clearance above the first fret. And you would like all 6 strings to be fairly close in that respect, so they're all kind of sitting at the same level at the nut. Okay, so we've fixed the string height at the nut, filled those slots in, got the truss rod in a good place, and the action's quite low and still sounding good. And the way I test that is just to play on some of the lower frets, listening for any buzz, and the middle of the neck. And you just want to play all over the guitar and make sure everything's ringing real good. And then we'll set intonation. Play your high E open. Play it on the 12th, and it's sharp on the 12th. So that means we want to move the saddle back. And with the saddle facing backwards like this, that means we tighten. It's got a ways to go, so it needs a few turns. Tune up again. Closer. Couple more turns. So close. Now just do that for 5 more strings. Okay, so we have all 6 strings intonated at the 12th, and since you've changed the length of some of the strings, you just want to play on the guitar again and just make sure. Sometimes it introduces buzz that wasn't there before if you significantly change the length of a string. Learn some intervals that you can play every time you intonate a guitar. For some reason I play these thirds with an open string and a third. I like to play triads up and down the neck. Just listening. If you do it a few hundred times, your ear becomes so used to those triads. When you can hear with one string, when one string is just a little out. Once you're all set up, make sure you plug in. And check electronics like that right there. A little scratchiness in the pot, which we will spray out with contact cleaner. Check that the volume between the 2 pickups is about the same. So neck pickup, bridge, pretty close. Middle position, you just want to make sure it's not losing all power, because if it is, the 2 pickups could be wired out of phase. thing to check is the jack, which I notice is a little suspect here. When you've got your screws taken off the rear electronics panel, use something really tiny if possible and pull this up by the screw hole, as opposed to trying to fit something in here and do that, because you will chip the paint around there. And just take a look at the electronics, give them a quick spray with contact cleaner. And when it comes to the jack, I'm going to take that off from that side. With these new Gibson electronics, usually the easiest thing is to gently push down on that tab and pull this out. Otherwise, it's real hard to get the jack out to take a look at it. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this new jack that they use. Usually if your jack sounding scratchy, I think it's one of two things. There can either be some buildup on the contact points, either oxidation or something, just over time. I like to roll up a piece of sandpaper and put it through the jack like that, and then have it come out, if possible, sometimes like this. And now I'm sanding both those contact points. And I also really heartily encourage sanding the inside portion of the jack by just doing this. Nobody ever taught me that, but I just found it's one of those things when I can't figure out why a jack is sounding bad, it seems to really help. Of course, if it's not the buildup, then sometimes it's just that these two posts may have over time moved too far apart and are not making a good solid connection. So I'll usually take some pliers and just gently bend them in a little bit. So now they're, and you can also sometimes have to bend this part out. If I can show that, this part out a little bit. That will also help make a more solid connection. You don't want to bend these too crazy or you'll do more harm than good. So unplug it from the board. I like to just put a small screwdriver through. You can see how it pops out over here. Put the jack on there, and that helps me just guide it with that washer not falling off, and just pops right out for you. And now you can tighten this up. This kind of comes in handy. It's one of these Music Nomad screwdrivers that, I don't know, fits a lot of different things on a guitar, and that just will help you with the jack. Just tighten it right up like that. Then you're going to want to not forget to put, see that little jack goes into the board right here and just pops in. Work on the jack seems to have been successful because